Everybody keeps commenting on my shirt, and I just say thank you. Star Wars. What Star Wars? Well, I napped this afternoon for 15 minutes.
Nice, man. That's awesome.
It was a great 15-minute nap.
So if there's an emergency at work, you get to have carbs.
There's an emergency at work, I get to do whatever's necessary to fix the emergency.
And
The carbs
that
are
includes
just.
eating cookies and stuff then.
Go get him, Tobe. Go get him.
Oh, you're cold? When was the last time somebody washed those blankets? I was wondering the other
Well, it's
day.
because she's used to sitting in a trailer that's like 953 degrees.
I'm okay
No,
with
it's not what it is.
953. It's just
It has been a
It's
little while, but in general, it's my children who use them, so
Acclimated.
fair warning.
I actually saw someone post in one of my food truck groups. They were asking if everyone can survive this immense heat that happens inside the food truck. And what was? Anyway, they were basically like, it ends up being like 120 degrees. And one girl was like, yeah, I actually do hot yoga all year long, so my body is like acclimated to it.
Acclimated.
I'm like,
My car said it was in the 80s today.
Yeah.
Really?
Slowly.
I do
Oh, no,
I do
I
like
was-
hot Taco Bell every now and then.
That's a
I
stuck by the
didn't-
computer all day. So I don't know.
I was stuck by, yeah.
I don't do
Yeah.
hot yoga.
Charlie said it was gonna be midsummer-like weather, so.
Well, it was, I had
Really hot.
my fan and my other fan, and I didn't even open the door today.
Can I ask the lady something? Did anybody read the Kicker's remarks about the commencement speech? Did anybody read that speech?
Harrison Butcher? Yeah, I read the whole
No,
transcript.
did any of the ladies read it?
Oh, did any of the
I didn't
ladies
read all of it, but I did,
Did you see the
I
part that-
watched a good
Did you
chunk
see
of
the
it.
part that they were all complaining about? Did you read
The
that?
football player guy.
About the girls, about the women? Did you read it?
How when his
No,
wife,
the only thing that I saw was, sorry,
no, go
was
ahead.
when his, was like things that didn't have anything to do with what he said. I was like, I don't feel like any of the women that I read comments on actually,
And you gotta stand.
Wasn't
Okay.
it about women can stay home and take care of the
So he
kids
was
and it's
basically-
okay?
What he
Is that
said
what
was,
it?
I know ladies here are looking forward to their careers,
Mhm.
but then he also said, the majority of you are looking forward to getting married and having children
Mhm.
and being a homemaker, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
But he also said that the other thing that he's mad about, I think he said, don't let society's, what's the word he used?
I don't remember the
Basically,
exact
You don't
word.
have to follow what society tells you. to
Yeah.
do.
Right,
That's
right.
basically what he was saying. And so they all were like, so they're, well, he's attacking women and telling them they have to stay home.
Yeah, no,
Blah,
I,
blah, blah. It was
but
horrible.
aside from his very extemporaneous discursus into the Latin Mass, he spent like 2 paragraphs on that. That was odd. But outside of that, I agree with like every word
And then
he
somebody
said.
kind of had, not argued, but I pointed some stuff out to this girl. It was like, I guess his wife doesn't mind being complacent. I'm like, so raising children is complacent?
Yeah, it's like the hardest job in the world.
You're misunderstanding the point. I'm like, no.
No, you're not
Don't
misunderstanding the point.
And somebody's like, so I said, so educate me. And
Right.
she goes, well, he's going away from what a Catholic means or something. I'm
No,
like,
wildly incorrect.
what are you talking about? So
That's
if
actually
you're
core
what a
Catholic doctrine.
See, there's actually, if you read I think Catholics think motherhood is way up here.
Correct.
I think they regard women as almost higher than men, actually.
In many,
And
in
raising
many
children.
respects, yeah.
So right.
As long as you guys know that.
So I said that to her, and somebody else kind of defended me.
Yeah.
You're way off base. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, no, marriage is even considered one of the 7 sacraments in the Roman Catholic institution. And Harrison Bucker is accurately reflecting Roman Catholic theology when he states that in his marriage, he will attain salvation, being that marriage is one of the 7 sacraments in the Roman Catholic faith. Again, I read the transcript. I actually think by the time I was done poring over it, I was going to do a podcast episode on it and listen to my better half, the better half of myself. She wasn't saying not to do it. I listened to the better half of my brain, because again, my podcast is about balance. And honestly, there's not a whole lot of ways I could bring balance to the speech. I felt like it was very well balanced. And only people who wanted to read an attack on women in the workforce or an attack on femininity, only people who wanted to read that in there have read that in there. But that's eisegesis. That's looking into a speech and drawing out what you want to draw. That's reading into it. Whereas exegesis, if you're listening to the speech and letting the speech speak for itself, it's a very well-placed speech. And I recommend everybody read it. Again, you won't be interested in the parts where he extols the virtue of the Latin Mass, but to his point, he it's another exclamation point on the idea of conservatism and faithfulness to the old ways. And what's really interesting is the Benedictine sisters got on him for this, and they said he represents a very narrow view of Roman Catholicism.
But did you read the rest of what they said?
Mhm.
We strive on being inclusive.
Yeah. So
Because
they're only,
that girl said, well, the sisters disagree with them. I'm like,
Yeah.
but read their whole. What they
yeah, they're
say.
only like 2 steps away from being the
Methodist.
the sisters at the Brooklyn Dodgers
Yeah.
game or whatever. Yeah,
Well, I guess I
those
should take
kind.
that back. I'm not a Methodist anymore.
The new ones.
Yeah, well, there's 2 Methodists. There's one really cool conservative strand, but
Yeah.
the other threads are long gone.
Before I came here, I managed to dodge either Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses at the door. And I know when the guy that built our garage was a Jehovah's Witness, and he did not like talking to me.
Yeah.
He wanted to talk to Arnold because I was a woman. And I'm much better at that sort of stuff than Arnold is,
Sure.
even Arnold said so. But are they like that in their church? And also, aren't the Mormons like that too, where the women are just supposed to be quiet and don't have a say? And,
So Jehovah's Witnesses, right?
Don't
Charles
tell me.
Taze Russell was a lot different than Joseph Smith in terms of their treatment toward women. So JWs are going to be a little bit more culturally in line. And Mormons today are going to be a little bit more culturally in line because they adapt their teachings to conform to whatever society insists, right?
Oh, okay.
But the original Mormons, women were property, right? Zippity zoppity, women are property, and you could marry 7 or 8 of them. And the end all be all of Mormon theology is if you're a woman, you get to have babies forever, which doesn't sound fun for women, I can't imagine. And men, you could just essentially, it was actually frighteningly similar to the Muslim idea of heaven. Having multitudinous women to please you at your leisure.
Well, they used to
And,
call them heifers, right?
I don't know about that. I don't know, Amber.
That's what
I don't know about that, but the Mormon temple, women are
Yeah.
not allowed to do.
Yeah.
Well, I
say,
can't
talk in
imagine
different
any
places.
religion that suppresses women can be too terribly enlightened. I don't think it's been long enough.
You know, it's funny, right? Because it's actually one of the accusations that's levied against Christianity is that it suppresses women. And what's fantastic about Christianity is if you read the Bible, you'll find that, number one, that's not true at all. Number two, it actually protects and elevates and exalts women by saying, hey, this is a woman. She is different than a man. Don't impose man's duties on a woman. Ma'am, you have your own roles and your own abilities that are different from a man's because by design. And you look at anything else in nature, a male flower and a female flower, not necessarily, but the 2 parts of a flower, male and female, they're different. A lion and a lioness. No one would ever wrestle to say, oh, I demand equality between lions and lionesses. We look at nature and we say, that's just the way it is. But with humans, we go, oh, no, it's actually an embrace of our biological differences and a celebration of them and what we do differently, as opposed to insisting everything be the exact same.
The problem is they confuse the religious folks who say these things are in the Bible and what the Bible actually
Yeah,
says. What Jesus
yeah,
did.
for sure. Susan?
If Jesus hadn't taught equality, then through Paul, there wouldn't be equality today.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Because there never was before.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, is before Christianity, women were quite oppressed. And now you say, well, in your church, you don't believe women can be pastors. Well, I also believe men can't be mothers, okay? So
It's a
there are.
social construct.
Oh, well, you mean
You know.
Baptist church won't allow women to be pastors?
Baptist churches, historically, most are not egalitarian. Many are,
Oh.
but most are not. Now, and here's the thing, it's actually not a Baptist church thing, it's a Bible thing. Because if you look at the scripture, it says, well, a pastor must be grave, he must be the husband of one wife, he must rule his house well, and things like that. And I think there's room in the scripture for male and female deacons. I think there's a robust room for debate there and discussion, and I think that's. But when it comes to the pastorate, and again, people say, "Oh, that's an assault on women." Actually, it's absolutely not. It's leaning into human's biological design, and leaning into that. And here's the amazing part, right? The pastorate was designed during a time where men went out, you worked, you toiled, the ladies stayed home, tended to the children, And the men were the ones who were going out into the, not the agora, the stoia, the gates of the city, the temples and things like that. They were the ones carrying out the public duties and the offices of the community. So why not? Why would that not extend to the pastorate, right? And only in our post-sexual revolution, modernist time, 1920s and onward, have we really leaned into everything has to be the same or it's mistreatment. But it couldn't be further from the truth. We need to celebrate our differences. We need to lean into how we're different. And that's actually what's really interesting. If you look at this homogeny that's being pushed, we call it the gender blur, right? If you look at the homogeny that's being pushed, it started with anything you can do, I can do too. Then it was anything you can do, I can do better. And now men are saying, well, then I can be a woman better than a woman can be a woman. And we're all supposed to just allow that. But that started somewhere. That the ball got rolling a long time ago when at once we decided that there really were no differences and everybody should just be allowed to do everything the same way. Instead of saying, actually, I have natural, divinely biological proclivities towards certain things, and I have natural, divinely biological proclivities to certain other things. And here's the best part about it. You don't have to go very far into this life to see that that's distinctly the case. From you give a boy a piece of toast, he's going to chomp it into a gun and start shooting people. You give a girl a little doll and she's going to nurture it, whereas the boy will try to do tricks with it and
Take
bungee
his head
cord it off.
off.
Yeah, right, tear his head off. And you say, well, that's
Shoot it with
just,
a toast gun.
you say, that's just hormones. Well, that's the name we've given that today. But we would also say that's the differences. And those differences lend themselves to efficiency in different roles in life. And so what's hilarious is, and one last thing on this, I'm just one, we say Jordan Peterson actually handled this remarkably well as many others. But he says 98% of bricklayers are men. Why is that? And we say equality, equality, equality. Well, surely you don't mean that when it comes to bricklaying, right? And we say, well, men are much more suited to bricklaying. So, right. So there's the rub, right? What's that? I can't, the pay gap. Yeah, the one of many discussion. And it leaks into the level of vapidity and lack of gray matter-age as the WNBA and NBA discussion. We say WNBA, they're paid $70,000 a year. That's because nobody buys tickets to these things. You know what I mean? And if it weren't for the stipend from the NBA, the WNBA would simply not exist. And so we say, I want equality. If you try to force equality and you try to shoehorn people into roles for which they are not biologically designed, then you're going to end up with a mess.
Not to be sexist or anything, but
No, hit me with it.
the women look like men when they're playing, basketball, football, whatever they're playing, because they're not feminine when they're playing. So it doesn't, and this is just my
Sure.
take on the game.
Yeah.
Get him, Pearl.
It doesn't make me think of them as women,
Sure.
and
It's funny, right? I hadn't really considered that myself, but I will say there are certain activities that historically, I guess, men and women have participated in differently, right? And I don't know. I don't want to chase too many rabbits, but I suppose.
Right.
What's that? I know, right? But we're having a good time. Shoot.
Yeah, this is an interesting conversation.
Yeah. So one of my favorite teachers, you guys already know, I mention him 50 times a year, if not 50 times a week, Tim Mackey. He is an egalitarian. That's the belief that women and men can both share equality in roles in the ministry. Whereas I don't believe the Bible teaches that. And out of an effort to embrace the validity of such a role, because I respect Tim Mackey in so many ways, and many other Bible teachers, Craig Keener, Douglas Gruthius, many other Bible teachers that are so, what? Anyways, so many other Bible teachers that are so wise and so smart and so in love with Jesus that I'm like, I kind of want to go that way because it really seems, but here's the difference. Jesus himself said, have you not read that in the beginning, God created them male and female? And he didn't appeal to culture. He appealed to creation. And Paul appealed to creation much in the same way. When he was discussing roles in the church and things like that, he knew that people would get bent out of shape and say, well, why are you putting your thumb down on women? He's saying nobody's putting their thumb down on anybody. He's saying, but if you look at the very beginning in creation, God made man and woman different to do different roles in different ways and to complete each other. And so today, I'll wrap it up with this. Today, what we find is a lot of competing rather than completing, both ways. And I also would say that though there are many women very gifted in teaching the scriptures, many women from whom I learned, Carmen Ives, I don't want to list a whole bunch of them. I actually met, there are fewer of them than men naturally in my circle. But I think Carmen is actually a very good example. Carmen Ives, excellent teacher of the Torah and the Ten Commandments, brilliant scholar. One of my favorite Bible teachers actually was a PhD candidate at Duke University. And she was fantastic at really breaking open the New Testament and its authorial intent. Fantastic. But there is a big difference between teaching the Bible and leading a church or being the pastor of a church. They're two entirely different responsibilities. And what's that?
Phoebe.
What?
Phoebe,
right. Phoebe's a great example. She apparently read the letter to the Romans and even gave the sense of the letter to the Romans when she went into the churches. Paul actually commended Phoebe to the church and said, receive her, listen to what she's saying. This is good. We strengthen each other this way. So when Paul says the women should be silent in the church, I believe he is talking about the idea of usurping the authority of the pastor and saying, I hear what you said, but let me throw this down at you in a way that would foment insurrection and dissent unhealthily in a church. That's what Paul was tamping out.
It's also Corinth.
Right. Corinth was a big difference between Corinth and a lot of America resembles Corinth in a lot of ways today. But all that to try to say this is I don't apologize after much study. I don't apologize for siding with what the scripture clearly says, even if it doesn't always resonate with me. You guys have to know that some things the Bible teaches don't resonate with me personally.
Mm-hmm.
On Monday, I showed up at pickleball and somebody pulled me aside and said, I didn't like what you preached on Sunday. It didn't sit well with me. I didn't like it. And he said, that means you're doing your job. And all right. So sometimes the Bible doesn't sit well with me and it doesn't resonate with me. And I say, I don't like the way that plays out. And I don't like some of the implications of that. But that means the Bible's doing its job because it's allowing my thinking to form around the scriptural worldview rather than me trying to force the scripture to my worldview, which the air we breathe, our culture has already told us so many things about life and the way life should be that we don't even realize it has. And that's why it's really cool that the scriptures are unchanging and why we submit to the scriptures rather than force the scriptures to submit to us. Because how many generations in a row force the scriptures to submit to us, and then we find ourselves pretty far removed from what the Bible actually teaches. Not just on particular dogmas, but just the entire mentality of the Bible and the biblical worldview. The farther we get away from that, the worse our world become. And if you need proof, Exhibit A, look around. You know. So anyway.
Why is it that we think, as time goes by, that we're so much smarter than God? And as time goes by, I mean,
Yeah.
I was realizing the other day, I was thinking about this, that during the 60s and 70s, there was a huge increase, all of a sudden, of serial killers killing women, mostly in California and Texas and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, it was because the hippies, and I remember as a kid, you couldn't drive along the road without seeing some hippie standing there with a thumb out. You know, women by themselves.
Mm.
And to me, God created Adam first and then created Eve because he meant for the men to help protect the women.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think that when we got so sophisticated and we thought that women, you know, could handle themselves and everything, then I think that we're just disillusional. And when you look at all those women that died because they thought they were perfectly safe by themselves, hitching a ride
Mm-hmm.
on the side of the road at night.
Yep.
And not that it's their fault, I guess, per se, but
Right. It's not
they're
at
just
all.
misguided because society said, oh, you're fine.
It's society. It's obviously the criminal's fault to be sure, but the co-culprit there is as much society as it is that individual. Because again, the air we breathe. You see, Kim.
Well, our technology has outstripped us.
Yeah.
Look with the, all the fertility stuff,
Mm-hmm.
that stuff,
Oof.
transsexual stuff.
I gotta be
And
careful.
look what they're saying now about AI.
Yep.
What that's going to,
Yep.
what the potentiality is.
Yep.
It's like 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh, very
You know,
much so.
HAL?
Oh, I
Or
read
the
an article today
Terminator.
about
Didn't
how-
anybody watch the Terminator?
I know, right? Skynet.
I will say, something on the transit, they're actually, doctors actually are reversing how they feel about puberty blockers. And they're
Europe is
Most of the
stopping
European
that,
countries
yeah.
have stopped it.
Absolutely.
They're like,
Absolutely.
no more.
Yep.
It's not,
Yep.
there's more people committing suicide
Yes.
now than transition because they
Yeah.
regret transitioning.
I have,
And now there's a study coming out saying that these puberty blockers are the worst thing you can do to children.
yeah,
Yeah.
I have long believed that with this particular thing, the pendulum would swing back. There is only, it pushes against humanity too much. It does. And if it's not going to be this generation or the next generation, it'll be the one after that says, you know what, this isn't cool anymore to dress up like a furry, to switch genders, to mutilate our bodies. This is not okay. And now the resistance is actually going to be normative, you know,
I
rather
also
than
don't
weird.
understand how doctors aren't getting brought in for abuse.
Oh, you mean when
Because if
you
you
go
spank your
to,
child, that's abuse, but you can go and
Correct.
slice off a kid.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's child abuse.
Yeah. It's pretty sick.
Oh, well, yeah.
when you go to Midcoast Hospital and they've got a trans flag and they ask you if you're male, female, or other,
Or other.
I'm
yeah.
thinking, if they don't know biology, why am I
Yeah.
going to this hospital?
Yeah. And again, I'm just going to throw this in there. We would have never gotten to this point if we didn't move the markers way back when. Because Kim, you were.
I heard a clip on the radio about a mother saying that her son identified as a cat, and she was outraged that she couldn't take him to the vet because
Oof.
the vet would not treat him. But she thought changes should be made in legislation, so these furries.
But
could see the
ivermectin
vet.
Wow.
worms do work.
They have
Or should I say meow?
But we can't have the ivermectin worm.
Oh,
the
yeah.
worm, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's not actually. It's been, it's a,
I know,
that's,
I'm
that's
just saying.
medicine won awards for what it does for you.
Yeah, God, no, I mean, he's probably.
Yeah, it won all kinds of awards because it was
Yeah.
a great medicine thing to take.
Well, we'll put a bow around this whole thing by saying equal rights, equal fights. And I don't mean equal rights in a positive way. We should have equal rights in a positive way between men and women, all genders, color, whatever, right? But the modernist fourth wave feminist idea of equal rights is wildly unlike first wave feminism equal rights, right? And so equal rights, equal fights. In other words, I had these poor ladies on the side of the road saying, I'm in a, and there's a resilience there that again is born by our culture that said the woman is weak and small and frail if she has to depend on a man. Whereas the Bible would say, Paul himself said, actually, a woman is biologically weaker. That's why he calls her the weaker vessel. She's not mentally weaker, right? She's
It
biologically
could be finer,
like China.
bone china.
Exactly
yeah,
right.
yeah.
So that's a great illustration. I've heard you so many times. If you have the finest china, it is beautiful, it's delicate, it's even frail, right?
You can
It's
see
not.
through it.
Yeah, you can even see through it. It's not meant to bear the weight of a big 55-gallon steel drum, but we're not as pretty. Amen and amen.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm pretty.
But we're not, right? And the whole idea is that's what makes us different, and they serve different purposes. They're both containers. But the more we try to move toward equality is the more you actually thicken the beautiful bone china and you ruin that. And the more you make thinner the 55-gallon steel drum to make it more like the other, and you ruin that. Things get ruined when you pursue the blur. But if you leave things distinct the way they should be, listen, don't hold it against me, hold it against Paul, and hold it against me for saying it, I guess. Again, I don't really apologize. Paul said, women are more prone to be harmed. He even went as far as to say that in the book of Jude, was it Jude? Peter. He said that these false teachers will target women because women were more likely to believe the lies because that they would peddle. Again, you go into cell phone store. I've said this so many times. People will come into the cell phone store. If a woman came in with her husband, I knew I had a much harder sale on my hands. If a guy came in by himself, I had a harder sale. If a woman came in by herself, it was an easier sale. It just was. I don't know if that's true across all industry, but in enough industries I've seen when it comes to sales, and you say that's not fair.
Well, that's true.
It's just the way it is. And Paul said that the reason the serpent went to Eve first. Paul said it. And you say, are you calling women? I'm not calling women anything. I'm saying part of our differences, and that's the beautiful part about it. It's the gorgeous part about it. That's why men and women complete each other so well. It's one flesh is where someone says, I have a weakness here. Don't worry, I have a strength here. I have a weakness here. Don't worry, I have a strength here. My wife and I have completed each other since April 15, 2011. Like she is everything I need. And here's the thing. Well, you're a big 55-gallon drum. Why do you need China? Are you nuts? Like, I need her to raise the children in ways that I can't. I would either keep them way too safe or let them veg out on TV 8 hours a day. And who cares about vitamins? So can eat McDonald's every day. My wife, though, she completes me. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's nothing. Oh, sorry. This is a real passionate point of mine, and I believe God got it right. You know, Steve.
Imagine that.
Yes.
Well, I was
Right.
thinking what you were saying, man.
What a coincidence.
Man and woman, they complete each other.
Yeah.
Well, think about it. God created Adam,
Mhm.
and he created Eve out of Adam.
Correct. Yep.
So when a man and woman get married and come together, they complete each other again.
You are entirely correct. And actually, Tim Mackey speaks very well on that. Did a whole couple of sermons or episodes on that very concept. And to your point, Cheryl, Matthew Henry said this. When God created Eve out of Adam, he created her not out of his head to rule over him, not out of his foot to be dominated by him, but out of his rib, close to his heart and right by him, right? So there's some beauty there, and I think that's a good way to put a bow around it.
You complete me.
Aww. Complete me. Okay, good thing we only have 2 verses tonight, right? All right. What's that?
I like this conversation.
She's jealous.
Oh. I was like, what do I have something?
Yeah.
I did look up hairstyles for balding men today, and all of them have to do with like the Jude Law balding, the stuff up here, widow's peak. And so I had to be very specific, and I was like, hairstyles for large bald spot, back of head.
Oh,
I am not
exaggerating.
exaggerating when I tell you
Pretend you're Jewish.
there were hardly any hairstyles, and instead I got many suggestions for hair pieces. And some of them looked really good, but I'm not gonna do it.
You get the plugs.
Ray and John Ranger have got the perfect hairstyle.
Well, that's what I'm gonna lean. My wife is gonna give it one last attempt to get it. We had something going. An old video showed up on my history or whatever weeks ago. Me preaching, and I had it like almost like a buzz, but it was a little taller. But it looked like, oh, that's a respectable haircut for a 40-year-old balding man.
But you
And,
know,
I don't know.
I was talking to my sister, and she said that you don't have to go get all the Rogaine shampoo. And about a month ago,
Yeah.
I got this shampoo. I had to order it from Amazon because I didn't know where to get it. But it started making, well, it's made my hair curlier, but it started making my hair feel thicker. And a month later, my hair's growing back in.
Huh.
So you may want to try it. I can tell you what the brand is.
Did
if
you buy
wanna
from like
know.
Jack and Beanstalk Co. or something? Cause it sounds magical.
Oh, no.
Well, like it's, I don't know. Anyways. All right. Well, that's what, the reason I bring it up is I thought Amber might have been fixing my hair when she pulled me in. All right.
She's jealous of you.
So I'm not going to do an itemized review, but basically overall in the chapter, we have listened as James reaches out with a heart of compassion toward his church family, the flock that he shepherds, pleading with them to chase after God rather than anything else. He's concerned about their trajectory, and rightfully so. The unholy trinity, money, sex, and power, derails Christians more than any other reason. He loves his church too much to not say something, so now he moves to provide a triad of his own. James 1:19-20 says, "Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, for the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God." What's that?
Over here?
I was scanning the room.
Girl.
I was,
I wasn't over here.
I could not have been looking at you. I'm reading.
Yeah.
My goodness. Well, all right, so here's the pastor's paraphrase.
Came with your troublemaking shoes on tonight.
I love it. I love it. Oh, speaking of, those are actually really awesome shoes.
Aren't they?
Those are
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
She had him on the whole time.
I know, I didn't even notice them. I don't even know how to describe
You
them.
even like remarked about it when you first sat down.
I usually describe the things I see for Kim, but I don't even know how to describe them.
I think they've already described.
Well, actually,
Oh,
they
have
kind
they
of
been
remind me of
described already?
Dutch
Oh,
Sheets.
okay,
They
yeah.
remind me of-
Susan did earlier.
No, they're beautiful. Now I'm gonna get some like that. All right, so here's the pastor's paraphrase of James 1:19-20. This, by the way, wherefore, it's really interesting that word is there. This is one of the few times in the scriptures where this is found in what we have today as the received text. It's not found in any of the other texts. So we say, well, what do we do? Well, then from that point, we search to understand why, to understand what it means, to understand what the biblical author was trying to get across. And here's the deduction. He says, you must pay attention to do this, dear church. And some commentaries have said, James is trying to say, even though what you're about to hear is short and pithy, you must still commit this to memory. That's the idea that James is trying to get across with that opening word, wherefore. Anyhow, you must pay attention to do this, dear church. Listen promptly, and at the first response, don't be so quick to open your mouth, and don't be short-tempered. Man's anger does not produce the kind of right relationships desired by God. You say, I like the way James said it more. I like the way James said it more. It's perfect.
It's
Swift
more-
to hear, slow to speak, slow to
beautiful
wrath.
sounding.
It's amazing. And you say, well, it almost sounds like a proverb. You guys know this by now. James channels Proverbs. He channeled Jesus. And so there's three very brief observations I want to make. I will make them quickly, and then we can talk about our experiences with this and how this applies to our lives. First, to quote Roper, he says, the imperative given in this text is really a conventional Jewish exhortation. Now, here's a statement from Barclay, right? Barclay took his time saying this, but I hope that you'll give it a listen. I always hesitate to put slightly longer quotes, but I want you to listen to this the best you can. He says this: there are few wise men who have not been impressed by the dangers of being too quick to speak and too unwilling to listen. A most interesting list could be compiled of the things in which it is well to be quick and the things in which it is well to be slow. Now listen to this. Sayings of the Jewish fathers we read, there are four characters and scholars, quick to hear and quick to forget. His gain is canceled by his loss. Slow to hear and slow to forget, his loss is canceled by his gain. Quick to hear and slow to forget, he is wise. Slow to hear and quick to forget, this is an evil lot. Ovid bids men to be slow to punish, but swift to reward. Philo bids man to be swift to benefit others and slow to harm them. So this is what Barclay says. In particular, the wise men were impressed by the necessity of being slow to speak. Rabbi Simeon said, all my days I have grown up among the wise and have not found aught good for a man but silence, whose multiplies words occasion sins, or multiple words occasion sin. Mm-hmm. Jesus ben Sirach writes, be swift to hear the word that thou mayest understand. If thou hast understanding, answer thy neighbor. If not, put your hand on your mouth, lest you be surprised in an unskillful word and be confounded. That's in Ecclesiasticus 5. So Barclay closes by saying, Proverbs is full of the perils of too hasty speech. When words are many, transgression is not lacking, but he who restrains his lips is prudent. Proverbs 10. He who guards his mouth preserves his life. He who opens wide his lips comes to ruin. Proverbs 13. And then 17:28. Even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. And then Proverbs 29 says, do you see a man who's hasty in his words? There's more hope for a fool than of him. So Barclay ends his commentary with that. So very easily we see that James is channeling the wisdom of Ecclesiastes, the wisdom of Jesus ben Sirach, who existed about 100 years before Jesus, and then Jesus Christ. And then you see him channeling the book of Proverbs. So James is soaked in ancient wisdom. We know this by now. So that's the first observation. What James is saying here is not just a random cute little saying. He is speaking proverbial wisdom, something that he wanted us to hang on the fridge of our minds, so that every time we walk by it, we see it and we remember. Secondly, of three, James isn't dispensing random wisdom either. These are not disconnected pieces of advice. We just got done talking about loving the world and chasing after wealth, but instead, God, the Father of lights, gives us the true word, which is able to save our souls. As a result of having this true word, which is able to save our souls, here's what that mature Christian life looks like. And today he begins by talking about swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. Next week, he's talking about not being morally filthy, and we'll tackle that there. But Hebert says this: all members of the Christian community, whatever the extent of their knowledge of the word or the degree of their spiritual maturity, need this exhortation. The imperative, as an appeal to the will, calls for their personal acceptance of the duty. What duty? To be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. The effective functioning of the word in daily life demands their active cooperation. The Christians were dependent upon the preaching of traveling missionaries and of local teachers for the knowledge of the gospel. What are you trying to say, Britt? Lenski summarized it very well. Here's what he says. James is clearing up the way for the proper reception of the saving word of God. A person who keeps up his own talking makes a bad hearer. So James is not just saying swift to hear randomly. He's actually talking about the same word of truth that he mentioned in the last verse. Does it apply elsewhere? Of course it does. This is a proverb. It applies to many situations. But what James has in mind is this word of truth that comes from God. He wants us to hear it instead of being so quick to speak and instead of being so quick to wrath. Have you noticed that people who are saturated in the word of truth are not swift to speak or swift to wrath? They're the most careful listeners you know. Now, again, I want to point out that there are certain roles and personality types that talk more than others. This does not mean someone's not saturated in the word. However, there is that person who will interrupt, constantly interject, feels like they have to add something to some conversation, even when it's vain or empty and it's, not really. Those are the kind of people you might put a flag up and say, I don't know about the wisdom of this person. I have learned this from personal experience. When I talk a lot, very few people doubt my intellect. But those same people will often doubt my wisdom. It's one thing to know it all. It's another thing to be a know-it-all. So that's kind of what James is getting at here.
So which one are you?
Shut up. All right. Or to let Spurgeon put it a little bit more bluntly. He said this. I love Spurgeon. He's great. I really do. He said this. Because it is by the word that we're begotten, let us be swift to hear it. Slow to speak, because there's so much sin in us that the less we speak, the better. In the multitude of words, there wanteth not sin. Great talkativeness is seldom disassociated from great sinfulness, slow to wrath. So Spurgeon links them all together. If you speak a lot, you're going to have, and he sees wrath probably a little more open term. And trust me, there was so much fun Greek study in hear, speak, and most importantly, wrath. There's a lot of application for this. But I just wanted to point that out, that James is not being entirely disconnected from the context of the passage. And then my last observation for you to consider this evening is that this trio of imperatives sets the stage for the rest of James's letter to a large degree. Listen to what Dobson, Feinberg, Hinton, Kroll, and Wilmington say in their commentary. Here's what they say. This is fantastic. I did not think about this before I read this. Listen to this. They say, from this point, the practical epistle of James follows the three categories listed here. Swift to hear, James 1:21 through 26, regarding hearing as doing. Slow to speak, James 3:1 through 18, including the vulnerability of excessive talking and the comparison of conduct and speech. And 3, slow to wrath, James 4:1 through 17, identifying the sources of bitterness. The threefold admonition explains the proper response to the trials of life discussed in 1:2 through 18. So these guys, Dobson, Feinberg, Hinton, Kroll, and Wilmington, they see this triad as almost like a really cool link between the opening, which is about the trials of life and not pursuing well, and the rest of the letter, which is about Christian conduct. He sees it as the thing that links the rest of it. And I really think they're onto something. So I hope it's clear that what we often see as a passage that can be taken in isolation, and to be fair, this one can quite well stand on its own, is often just a brushstroke in a larger portrait. To this end, I think it wise to apply James's words here to this very passage, lest be prompt and ready to receive this word and listen in general, but be much slower to speak and become angry. And then for Kevin's sake, I wrote, this is the way.
Lucky in it.
It's a Star Wars phrase. My last paragraph simply reads, in the end, this passage teaches us that God cares about and is invested in our relationships with each other. What do you mean by that, Britt? Well, swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath, that's just the first of the two verses. The second verse says, for the wrath of man works not the unrighteousness of God. In other words, it doesn't produce the standard of righteousness that God requires. So if we're swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath, that will foster the right relationships that James is focused on, which we also covered 2 weeks ago in Philippians 4. What's everything to true, honest, just, right relationships can only be brought about by being swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. So there are no inconsequential conversations. There are no worthless interaction. There are no words exchanged that do not matter. Everything counts and either contributes to or detracts from God's vision of his good world lived in his good way. Everything you say matters. Everything. Every word, every joke, every idle word, every sigh, everything matters. And it either cleans up or pollutes the ocean of reality. And it will either facilitate good relationships between your fellow humans, or it will break them apart. There is nothing that does not do either one of those things. Either one of those things. I hope that makes sense. Your words are going to do one or the other. And that's what James is trying to help us understand. If we want to do right relationships, if we want to do things right, and we want to be like Christ, you can't be snippy. You can't be sensitive. You can't be sarcastic. I'm trying to think of S words, clearly, right? No, but great opportunity busted open, right? When you hear this advice, and when you hear James say, these are imperatives for the Christian as he or she moves toward God and others in the right way, what do you think?
Well said.
Yes, James said it best. Bro?
It's clearly as opposite to our world as we can get.
Oh man, ain't that the truth?
The ones that know police, the ones doing all the shouting and getting the crowds all wound up and try to get them off to do something they don't even think about what's been said.
Yep. Well said, Ralph.
I mean, one of the things I've always wondered is when they create those riots, do you realize you're burning your own homes down? It's all started by someone making a roaring, hot speech. They get off and they start tearing up and they don't even think about what's been said.
Mhm.
Yeah, Tobe.
I think what it's done is you used to be able to talk to each other and say things about each other and laugh about it and still be friends. Now you can't. Anything you say, if you're not for this, then you're bigoted, you're this, you're that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So there's no, now in society, there's no in between anything. There's no, hey, that's just us being who we are.
Yeah.
We can still be friends. Now it's if you disagree with something the government's doing, they ban you, they take you off friends list on Facebook. Or they,
Yep.
There's no compassion anymore for anything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
you hate them.
Yeah.
They hate you automatically. It's like, so.
I just read something today. It was this woman. She was called fat or something, and I don't know if she was fat or whatever. But somebody said, "Oh yeah," she was told that she would never model or star or something, and then it said, "But she overcame the hate and pushed through." And I'm like, "Oh, hold on." I immediately was like, I didn't even read anymore. Actually, I was like, "Hold on." Overcame the hate. Who hates her? Someone who said, "I'm afraid you're not what we're looking for in our modeling agency," or "I'm afraid you won't appeal to audiences with your plus size." Okay, insensitive at best, rude at worst. I don't know, but no hate. Who hates? That's such a good point, Tobe. Now you hear something and it's reactionary. It's all hate. It's not so.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that these has to do with reactions? By the way, swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. These are not idle positions. These are reactionary opportunities. Precious wifey.
Well, I was thinking of that as well, just in my own house. If I react to kids' behavior and I'm too swift, I get angry, I say something before I find out what's going on, then that passes around our house too.
Mm-hmm.
Because then that child is frustrated and then they treat their sibling cruelly, and it just keeps on going, and then it affects the entire spirit of our home. And then we can also do that like wherever we go. And you just kind of pass that around, and it's that building either the kingdom of heaven or building hell on earth. And we just kind of speak out of our reactions because of some sort of frustration, and then it's passed on to the next person that we meet, and then they're passing it on, whereas the opposite can happen too. You can pass on that kindness that then that person feels like, wow, and they feel really good, so they're going to smile at the cashier, and so the cashier isn't going to get so angry with all the people in the line. And that's what really struck me when you said everything we say and do, it matters.
Yeah.
And it really does, in a much more tangible way than we even may think it. We affect our whole city with the way that with the way that we behave.
Yep.
Bubbling upon. Something I learned early, and I think I've said it before probably, in my childbearing, was catch them doing it right.
Yeah.
And it stunned me because it was not what I was raised as. So adopting that was critical in me helping my sons.
That's really important. Yeah.
Kind of nervous to speak because great talkativeness is seldom dissociated from great sinfulness, so
I feel
I
that
guess I'm
too,
a real
Cheryl, don't
sinner
worry.
here, but anyway.
I feel that too.
The thing that I thought of when I saw that, besides, I should not talk so much and wear beige, but, is that, I think of people you talk to sometimes, and they're not listening to you.
Yeah.
They're waiting for you to shut up so they can
Yeah.
talk. You know, and I just got old enough that I decided they're not worth talking to because it's just a waste of time. They're not listening.
The book of Proverbs would say that it's a fool, and that won't listen. That's just waiting for you to shut up so they can talk.
Mhm.
The book of Proverbs would call that person a fool. And book of Proverbs, in many ways, not that we're ever uncharitable, not that we ever don't invest, not that we ever don't love and move toward them in Christ likeness, but you're not going to cast pearls before swine. You know, you're not going
She's
to.
too nice.
Yeah. I know.
You're not. You're not
Pigs
gonna.
can be mean.
You hate swine.
We
Right,
protect you,
right.
girl.
But to your point, Cheryl, it's so easy to say, you know, if I had to pick two people to talk to, I'm going to pick the one who I can have an engaging conversation with, not one who just going, Or in the words of one of my favorite theologians, I love him so much, but he does this to his co-host sometimes. Who goes, quite so, 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 quite so. And I'm like, okay, I know you want to say something, Tom, just say it. And the worst part is he's so smart and he's so wise and he's so right. You know what he has to say right. And it's just bursting out of him. And sometimes you guys catch me doing that on Wednesdays. I'm saying, oh, man, yep, yeah, oh, yeah. And I'm like, no, don't think about what you're going to say. Really listen to what they're saying, right? I have to do that a lot because I'm like, I have something to say. I'm right behind the eight, just a slam dunk. But I'm like, no, like I don't know everything. And so it's important for me too, Cheryl, very much so. That I need to not be that fool who makes people feel like they're not being listened to, who makes people feel like I just can't wait to talk. It's so important in my life too.
So something that Steph and I have done is on the food truck sometimes it gets really intense. So at the end, we'll say to each other, we actually did well because we communicated.
Yeah.
Didn't get mad at the other person, because when you get mad at the other person and there's been outbursts, mostly me, like other people outside the truck hear it. So now you're influencing. They're going like, well, these people can't even get along. You know what I mean? So it's good when we can say at the end of the day, hey, we did very well. We worked as a team. We communicated. Nobody got upset with each other.
Yeah.
Because that's very important.
Yep.
When you're working in such that environment. And then other people, they're listening. When you get this long line and they're hearing you argue, they're like, we're on the next truck.
Yeah.
That's part of what you're selling is.
Yeah.
It was the lids. It was the lids, Toby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and in your own life, even outside of the food truck, part of what you're selling is the peace that passes understanding, the quiet and peaceable life. You know, I've heard too many times people say, I would be a Christian, but I've known too many Christians. And they often have a point. Sometimes Christians are the most, well, you get it. And these things ought not so to be.
Okay, so of the churches that I remember and that I was actually involved with like other people, because at college I don't know like anybody in that church because I went from church back to college, church to college. So I didn't know anybody else. But growing up, I would honestly say that it's kind of off topic, but I would say this church probably has the greatest percentage of married couples that I think actually like each other.
Yeah.
I went to a number of churches that I was like where they would be like,
I really like
if
her.
you had to count the number of couples in your church that you think actually like being married to each other, how many would it be? And I was like,
I agree with you. Yeah.
I don't think it's two hands, and they were a much bigger church than this.
Yeah.
Well, just
So
like she said, Ethan said to me that he goes, you're weird. You're the only friend I know that loves his wife and wants to be around his wife one time. I'm like,
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
like, that's what you're supposed to do when you get married. You're
Yeah.
supposed to want to spend time with your spouse.
Yeah.
I mean, who else would I want to be with? Of course, my children, I want to see them, but
And your bro, I mean,
well,
me.
yeah, but a little bit of a difference. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't understand.
I don't
that
have
comment.
pigtails.
I'm like, what do you mean?
Oh my God.
Why are your friends married then?
Right.
Why are
The
they?
old ball and chain.
Yeah, exactly right.
Just, I didn't understand it. I'm like,
Yeah.
That's who I want to be around. Don't you get bored? I'm like, no.
No. Getting bored is a choice.
You know?
It's a choice. Yep. Swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. Honestly, the key to a good marriage, key to a good relationship.
Yeah.
I want to point this out. You mentioned this, Toby, when you're on the food truck and you think maybe a good rule of thumb to have plastered on the top of your food truck above the door, like the blood on the doorpost in the Old Testament, is swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. But what that would come into play, I imagine during a very, very busy rush hour. Stephanie, do you have the rice? Yeah, I have 2. I said 3. Oh, I only heard you say 2, but I said 3. Okay, let me get the third one. And not that it would ever go quite that way, but it's playing out in my head.
Usually it's my fault. So.
Yeah, yeah, right.
We have a whole new system
Right.
now.
Oh, good, right.
She
So-
actually missed her mistakes now.
Oh, right. Oh, good. Oh, wow. I love this. So, so the way swift to hear would apply in that situation is you hear the concerns of the other person through maybe some of their haste or hostility, right? And again, I picked Toby and Stephanie as an example, but like, let's say me at work, someone who says, well, oh man, awesome example. Someone told me the other day that he said, I was sure that I had this conversation with you. And I was like, no, didn't have that conversation. And he went on to correct me for not taking notes in the conversation and not following through. And I was like, I really don't think we had this conversation. Let me make a phone call. Sure enough, we did not have the conversation. He had the conversation with someone else, and it was not with me. And so I was tempted in that time to get kind of angry because I was like, you're gaslighting me, bro. Like, you're trying to convince me that I heard something that I didn't, that I should have taken notes on something I didn't even hear. And I'm like, this is really, I don't know. I felt all kinds of reasons to get bent out of shape. Like, first, how dare you? You know what I mean? Like, I was kind of bent out of shape. But then and again, just an example. I'm trying to give a personal example, not because I want to be a hero, but because I don't want to single anybody out other than Toby. I don't mind. No, I'm just joking. But like, you're the man, dude. I love you. But like, I thought in my mind I was kind of bent out of shape, and then I had to hear, so to speak, where he was coming from. This dude had a really rough week. This guy was confused, and then I'm like, you know what? Doesn't even matter. It's just my pride that's upset. Besides, the guy actually said sorry. So what else is left? Nothing's left except just to move forward, you know? And things are going to happen that we say, I don't understand that decision. I don't think this is right. Then sometimes being swift to hear is slowing down and stopping and just saying, what is that other person's perspective? You hear the thoughts of their heart, so to speak, and you try to look at it from their perspective. I think that could be a big part of what it means to be slow to hear, right? Pearl talked about on Sunday morning how she did that. You did. When that lady came up and she, I don't want to, on the live stream, but I'm just saying you shared a testimony of how the Lord used that in your life, and you chose, instead of to be like, I'm doing you a favor, and then throwing the lawnmower at the person. Blades a spinning. Instead, she said, I'm going to not throw my back out, right? And,
She's with the weed whacker.
correct. Anyway, but instead she said, you know what? It doesn't matter if I agree with this person or not. This person has his person's taken umbrage, has a problem. I'm going to move toward that person in love and mercy, and I'm going to be slow to speak, slow to wrath, and the situation resolved, and it opened the door for a good relationship. The wrath of God doesn't produce the righteousness that God desires in the right relationship, but reacting the right way does produce the right relationship that God desires. That's what it is. Quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. Just a thought on that. Toby, you were...
I think it's the power thing too. I think we want to have.
Yeah.
We want to be the ones, and it's tough for me when we have this kid that helps us. He did the register last night. This is my domain.
Yeah.
Because I love talking to people. The tough thing I do is I'm standing by the door. There's a person there, and I have to just learn. I have to be like, don't talk, because he's supposed to be doing that. Because if I say something, he doesn't hear it. Now everybody's confused. Well,
Yeah.
And I could forget that girl wanted it or whoever wanted that.
Yeah.
So I just need to be like, okay, Toby, just look out into the crowd.
Stay in your lane.
Stay in your
Let me get the
lane.
order,
Yeah.
And just be quiet.
Yes.
It's really tough for me because that's our truck. That's like this.
Yeah.
This is a reflection on me.
Yeah.
So I have to be like,
You're gonna trip on his feet.
That's his job, so just be quiet.
No, that's huge, man.
You know,
That's hard too.
it's really hard for me.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Like, get it done, come on, let's go. You know what I mean? I'm just a bull all the time.
Yep.
I have to be like, okay, just, you don't need control all the time.
No, that's really hard for me. That's really hard for me. So I resonate with
I
that.
think that's the biggest thing in people is everybody wants that. That's the biggest thing I think we struggle with. in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah, no, I get that. Cheryl, I feel like you were up to bat.
Last week I went to get supper at Shuddy's and
shutties.
food truck, and I was standing there waiting, and I know, hey, I got some for your stuff last night, okay? But anyway, so, well, you just don't have crab meat rolls,
We
okay?
like Shuddy,
So-
they're really nice
Just
people.
Yeah.
He is nice, but I don't like his
But,
food. He's a nice guy.
But anyway, they have really good crab meat rolls. But anyway, so
Okay, really.
I was standing there waiting for our food, and there was this lady, and she was talking to me, and I don't know, she was an older woman, and she just started telling me about how she'd had cancer 3 times, and she was telling me about her kids and everything like that. And I didn't say hardly anything. I just listened, and just, and once in a while she might ask me something or whatever. And she's Native American, and she's not Christian, so she won't come to the church, because I offered, but told her about it. But anyway, but she did keep saying that she was so grateful that, this happened and that happened and everything. And just when she needed money, that she makes this Native American jewelry, and the place over in Wiscasset took a big order and everything. And so she has the money she needs and stuff. And I kept thinking when I was listening to her, that's God working in your life. That's God working in your life. But afterwards, we hugged, stranger, and then I went home with our food, and I just felt so happy. And I thought, gee, I have to shut up more often. So that was great. It was really a wonderful feeling.
Yeah. It's an ironic topic, right? Talking about not talking as much, speaking about not speaking is ironic. It's not lost on me. But, here we
Sure
are.
about that? Sure about that?
Yeah,
It's not lost on you.
it's not lost on me. Trust me, I feel the awkwardness. I do.
We love you, Mike.
I'm thankful.
We're all looking at him
I'm
now.
just kidding around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything you say is eloquent, though. I'll give you that. Very eloquent when you
Very
speak.
poetic.
If you were to see me in other roles and in other environments,
Oh, I've seen it.
like at BNI, I'm the clown.
Oh, my
I do a lot of talking, right? But like when I'm at my Bible study on Wednesday, I actually don't, I'm not the biggest talker. I like to learn and listen to the other guys. It's at work, definitely not the biggest talker. I just put my head down and do my job. So I guess like different roles, I think, you ever heard of code switching? You kind of lean into a different facet of your personality based on where you are, right? And so I feel like I code switch as appropriate. And so definitely in church, I feel like as the pastor, I do think there is a warrant to lead and to teach, and in teaching that requires talking, right? But I also don't want to abuse that and just go on and on and on. And I recognize I do. And actually, Kevin and I, we joke about it, but in reality, he really is helping me to rein in a lot of the extemporaneous stuff, especially on Sunday mornings. Hey, do you realize you went 12 minutes before we even sang the first song kind of thing? You know what I mean? I want that in my life. Because I can say something, just because I think it's going to be really good. And even if it is good, doesn't mean that it's right for that moment, right? So I don't know. There is a lot to be said about not saying things.
You're better at reading cues than Tolliver, because he can start going off on a topic, and he doesn't notice when your eyes glaze over and you fall out of your chair. You just keep talking.
Yeah.
So, and I'm dying to have him. I want to be there when he talks about Yeshua going to Tibet, and you don't think so. I want to hear that conversation. That's going to be very interesting.
I don't have
So
a whole
it's-
lot to contribute other than
Study him, because
what
he's really adamant about this,
Yeah.
and everything. And I'm thinking, I said, did you talk to Britt about that? He's like, no. And I'm thinking, okay, you
Yeah.
want to see a massive conversation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, well, there's the whole denominational tradition that believes that Jesus actually came to the Americas. And that would be the Mormon denomination. But yeah, now there are some pretty cool things that might happen around Tibet. Namely, if the Ark of the Covenant is still kicking around, you think it is, I think it isn't. But if it is, and I'm open, very open to being is, then it's probably somewhere in Tibet or Ethiopia. I don't know. Just a thought.
Mhm.
I'll bet it's in Tibet. If I was Tibetan, man.
No.
Templates, if you will,
What?
have it covered. by
Oh,
the
yeah.
testimony.
Yeah.
So whether
Yeah.
they built a new one or they know where it's at.
I know, I'm the boring guy. I'm the boring guy about the Red Sea crossing. I'm the boring guy about creation. I'm the boring guy about the Ark. I'm the wet blanket man. I am.
Was that in the second temple?
The Ark?
Yeah.
No. No.
What do you mean by you're the wet blanks?
Oh, I don't. So, like, you know how Charleston Heston split the Red Sea? And like Prince of Egypt. I just don't think it was like that. I think, and I feel bad. I
thinks
feel
that-
terrible saying it. Say
But
it,
the
Kevin.
Egyptian army got washed away in ankle deep water.
You know what?
Well, they say.
It was thigh deep. No, I'm just
It only
joking.
has to be a foot deep to sweep you away.
Right,
It's moving
right.
fast.
So all the
Right.
angels flew down there and put their faces in the 3 inches
I
of
know.
water.
There are weaknesses to my view. I acknowledge it. Yep, yep. No, regardless of where, I think it was the Sea of Reeds. I don't think it was that sensational. But even if it's on the Yansuf or the Red Sea, right? Even if it's there, the scripture says that the sea lost its strength, and after the eastern wind blew it away, and then regained its strength after the easternmost wind stopped. And so, to me, in my mind, it plays out. It's like a receding, like an off tide.
Like a tidal
And then,
wave.
right. And that happens all the time.
Yeah.
However, to Kevin's point, sometimes it's really cool to think about these things in such a grand way, because that brings God the most glory, the more magnificent the example. I don't know. There's a lot to be said about
I
it.
like the fantastical. So
Yeah,
I was,
nothing wrong with
because
that.
you can't argue the other, so I lean.
The Jordan River, that's an easy one for anybody. I mean, the Jordan River is just the Jordan River.
They crossed it, came back in.
Yeah. Oh, I believe they cross right over, just like the Red Sea. I think it, what was the the Ark? I think when the Assyrians destroyed the Ark, it was, or destroyed the things at the temple and captured the thing at the temple, I think it was gone. I think that was the end.
Snuck out long
And-
before that.
And a very popular view, and very quite possibly correct, is that it was. I am kind of excited when it comes to the shroud, though. I think the
Taken
shroud
and
of what's that?
You didn't finish your sentence, that it was taken and hidden.
Taken and hidden. Oh yeah, I didn't finish my sentence. Sometimes I do that to myself.
He also finished mine, so.
Ouch. Swift to hear, slow to speak. Slow to wrath. I think the shroud might be real.
I think it could be. That'd be really cool.
That'd be cool. I think it might be. I don't know. Really, some days I'm like 51% sure it's real. Other days I'm like 48% sure it's real. So it's.
See, that's the
really-
fun part, is the fantastical. I like the fantastical.
Yeah. Honestly, though, they don't know how the imprint on the Shroud of Turin got there.
I still don't.
Nobody knows. They said it actually looks like it would have come from like a blast of radiation, which we've never seen a body come back to life from being dead for 3 days. So one would think it.
I've actually heard someone come up with a theory that thinks that the human body before the fall was almost iridescent, and actually, like you would see in some forms of nature, which would explain Moses on the mount and actually glowed when he came down.
Bioluminescence.
Yeah. Why not, right?
So
Why not?
That'd be kind of
Because
cool.
he was in the presence of God,
Mhm.
You would have closed.
remember?
Which Adam was.
You want to know what's really cool about Moses and the glow? It's most interpretation of that Hebrew word actually mean horns. So if you look at many old statues of Moses and
Yeah.
many old lithographs of Moses, he has horns.
Mhm.
Moses was the devil.
Nope.
Nope,
Nope.
he was holy.
Yeah, Moses
I mean,
and horns is a very common motif in Hebrew thought all through Hebrew history. And it wasn't until we translated it into English that we kind of have this idea of like, and I'm not saying he didn't glow, surely he did, right? But horns is the literal meaning
Well,
of
it's
the
supposed to
Hebrew
mean
word.
power too. in A lot
Absolutely,
of different
totally.
cultures, yeah.
Authority, power, strength
Yeah.
was given to Moses. And he had it, and he wielded it, and he wielded it with meekness and strength, just the way Jesus did.
The altar had horns.
Yes, quite so.
So why did he have to cover his face then?
Well, I think there was glory too, absolutely. But I think it was accompanied by in fact, what's really interesting is it appears the Hebrew thought pairs those two together, is the horn and the glory and the radiance, which might be, and here's just I don't mean to get off too far into the weeds, but if you look at like Nimrod, he's always pictured with like a horn of strength, because these Assyrian, Proto-Assyrians and these, I mean, we're talking Nod, like Canaanites, right? They would have these horns on their head. And we say, where did they get that from? Well, the wild beasts of the field had horns. Maybe so. Truly, maybe so. Maybe something else. I don't know. I don't want to presume. I didn't live back then. Isn't it interesting how much we don't know? And we read back our reality into reality thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. Who knows? People's skin might have been translucent. Maybe people did have horns. Who knows? We have no way of knowing. You know,
I mean, the Egyptians had batteries and lights and analog computers
it's possible they had some really advanced technology.
from Nephilim.
And here's the deal. Even if you just peeled that one right off the, wow, open up that can. That was great. Going fishing with all those worms. But even if you discount a lot of the possible technological advances of the Egyptian, dude, they built those pyramids and nobody knows how.
Yeah.
And nobody really knows why. Somebody say, well, it's a granary.
It's like Easter
Nah, it's
Island,
not a
things like
granary.
that, yeah.
It's
Stonehenge.
And they think, they don't even know who built it.
I know.
They think it was probably the Egyptians, but then they look at it more and they're like, well, we're not sure it was even the Egyptians.
Correct.
I've even heard some people that said they could have been the people pre-flood who built it.
Which might mean something Tower of Babel. Who knows?
Well, those are all over
Aliens
the
built
world,
it.
and so.
Correct. Right?
So you're out on top.
Well, the earth,
Yeah.
the earth just showed up, so maybe they just showed up,
Well, it is flat.
Is there any
right?
It- it-
residual
came
for
from
the